Okay, it's Wednesday, September 7th, and this is a pre-open SPY video, about an hour, a little over an hour before trading begins, and we'll kind of look at the pre-market activity, the range, and how that aligns with some of the what-if scenarios that we've been going over. And everything seems to be lining up as it should in terms of where price may head given these levels. So let's kind of get into it. In terms of the bigger picture again, if you recall yesterday's video, this was Monday, the first day of the week here. This is a weekly chart. We took out these two lows, and that was anticipated. And the question is, are we going to hold there and possibly reverse back to the upside, or are we going to be heading more down towards the 380 area here, which is the next target on the weekly chart, by the end of this week? And what's developing here now on Tuesday is our overnight action. Let's look at it this way first. This is the range at the moment. This is the high and low that's developing. The market kind of slightly was up real early in the morning, and now we've come off of that, and we have a high and low here. And if we look at the high and low range on the daily chart, we see that the high is right at the midpoint of the prior day, and the low is right near the low of the prior day. So it shows that if we could have an opening price action that breaks below, this lower range and then continues lower, that sets the stage to head to that weekly target down here, which is that 380 area. But the next, target on the way is this first bar here, which is like 385. So we're at 390 now. So that's 5 points lower. And then we work towards that weekly target down to the 380 area. And it's also interesting as I look at this, this is a key area here, this little overnight range that also happens to fall. Not only did it take out these lows, but that's a little gap in here. You can see this between the high of that bar and the low of that bar. I'm looking back on the daily chart. There's a gap. A lot of times those gaps are, support. It's all context based whether you're expecting it to be support. But in this case, you can see here it's pausing after taking out these stops, and it's in this gap. And the question again, are we going to break through here and continue lower to 385 and 380 on the weekly chart, with 385 being the first stop as we head down here? And again, I'm still looking for that, given if you look back on my videos on the monthly chart, which is the biggest time frame, I'm expecting price to, after this failure to move above this green bar high, which is an inside consolidation bar, it usually goes to the bottom of that range once you see that failure, in August coming into September. So I'm still, until something changes, as I've discussed many times, I'm looking for it to be heading down here, which is all the way to like 375. So, along the way, you're going to get to 385, 380, 375, to get down there into this month, as long as conditions don't change. So what's interesting then to watch if conditions might change, you have a couple of levels here. First of all, on these red lines, what I've highlighted here, this is the open of yesterday, which is the open of this week. So again, you can see here that if we break above, this opening, the intraday, the pre-market range high and head higher with some kind of green bar, at that point, we're above the midpoint of yesterday, which is a good sign to maybe be reversing higher. And then what you want to see is follow through to this open of yesterday to turn the weekly chart, which is now red as of yesterday's green. And then at that point, you have, if you're going to get some kind of upward price action, you want to see if you take out the midpoint of the prior week to turn to have a weekly failure down. So in other words, you still have to get above the midpoint of the prior week to really determine that this is going to be a reversal. And that means you took out the low of this week, failed, and then you came back to the midpoint of the prior week, and that means you're likely heading up to the highs of the prior week, and that could be a big, big reversal. So in order for that to happen, it's going to happen in 3 steps, the way I see it. You're going to have to have a green bar, or some kind of move that starts above here and holds pre-market highs. That's going to get, then you want to see follow through right to the open of yesterday, which turns the weekly chart green, and then whether it happens today or Tuesday or into Wednesday, you want to see this midpoint of the prior week taken out. So you kind of, if you're going to get long today, in other words, above the halfway point of yesterday's bar, which aligns with the top of the pre-market range, you want to see that follow through, taking all those areas out. If you can't get that, if we just come up here and immediately take these out and then immediately fail, that would be classic taking out stops up here to start. Doesn't really follow through to any of those areas to turn, the reversal up. And if you see kind of, let's say it comes up here and then you have a big failure, I would get short a big way down here and expect those lows to be taken out. But for now, since we're opening down, we have an hour to go, let's say, looks more likely we're going to take out this area first. Again, just let price action lead us, whether it starts up or down, I don't know. But if we take this area first, again, this is the key area here. If we just can't reverse out of this area, and start back up, then we're heading down, more in line with the weekly chart to this target. And on the daily chart, that gets us to, at least today, I'm looking, you look for this low here, I think 385 as the first push as we work towards those weekly lows. And finally, let's look at it this way. If you have this big range and we start lower and can't follow through, any buy signal that develops here, let's say you get the first bar coming down and then you don't follow through and you take out that first bar high on like a red to green kind of move right out of the gates, well, then you're targeting up here to start. It doesn't mean the day, you're still starting near the lows of yesterday. And this day, that would be you kind of take out the failure of the downside to start, and you want to get above the midpoint of the prior day in order to really feel comfortable you're heading up to the the highs of the previous day. So any buys that develop down here, if you get a failure to lower, is just going to come to the midpoint of that's your target to start, and then you got to really see if you can continue. Once you get past the halfway point of the prior day, then all signs could start to that chain reaction to maybe head to the highs of the prior day, which is turns the weekly chart green, and then maybe even, continues up to the midpoint of last week. So I'm not really expecting any of that. I'm still expecting lower, but let's see what happens. And all these levels are now in place to monitor. And again, let's see where this pre-range starts. But again, it's lining up nicely, both at the lows of yesterday and the midpoint of yesterday. So those are good key reference points to, see how the opening price action either immediately gets above that or, or some point gets above that or some point gets below that and holds. That's going to be the key, relative to the way I look at things. So let's see what happens about an hour before the open.